All right, officially good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today to the NJAIA webinar. We appreciate you being here. Just as a reminder, this will be recorded and it will be available on the NJAIA YouTube channel shortly thereafter. Again, if you have any questions for the presenters today, please use the Q&A box down in the bottom middle of your screen, and they will answer those in a Q&A session at the end. Thanks again, and we are going to turn things over to Stacy Cleach.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's presentation, Design for Transportation in a Post-Pandemic Era. We are really excited to be continuing this series that had a lot of popularity in 2020 and bringing to you experts in each of the sectors that we're covering in the webinar. Okay. All right. Public transportation played a critical role during COVID and will continue to do so as we navigate the road to recovery. Public transit provided bus and rail service so that essential workers could get to hospitals, pharmacies, grocery stores, and all the other places who stayed open, oh my goodness, there's a typo in there, I'm sorry. The places that we needed to support us while we were home. The crisis underscored how important is functional transit to keep people and purchased objects moving, used an established equitable system of safe, clean buses, trains, and subways. The better designed solutions to transportation post-COVID will be those that evolve from the bottom up, increasing upon their spontaneous success, enhancing it forward. Our learning objectives today cover 1.5 credits of health, safety, and welfare. And the audience can expect to understand how participants will learn what design changes are expected and or necessary to ensure greater protection of the physical health and well-being of all transportation and facility occupants and users post-COVID. What each municipality will need to do to accept changes in transportation post-COVID, like greater social distancing, changes in queuing, more hands-free operation, and circulation through the transportation system. Safety. Participants will learn what code changes may be necessary, municipal rules for safety. The presentation will demonstrate architecturally what that will look like to protect occupants, users, and any others affected by buildings or sites from harm. Health. Participants will learn how municipalities can protect and enhance the emotional and social well-being of transportation occupants, users, and any others affected by buildings and sites by properly communicating and demonstrating the elevated health and safety measures put in place. This education and knowledge will calm and relieve the users, reducing stress and anxiety as people return to using public transportation post-COVID. And welfare. Participants will learn those aspects of professional practice that enable equitable access, elevate the human experience, encourage social interaction, and benefit the environment. Similar to restaurant seating in the street, transportation and associated circulation will need to spill for safe separation. This may mean changes in zoning, street closures, creating pedestrian commercial zones, architecturally creating bizarre atmosphere or farmers market tents for social gathering spaces. These changes elevate the human experience, encourage social interaction, and enable more equitable access. So later up this year on March 25th, we have our historic buildings episode from the post-pandemic webinar series, and on April 29th, the warehouse industrial episode. The other episodes that we presented in 2020 are available to you through our YouTube channel. So we encourage everyone to please subscribe to the AIA New Jersey YouTube channel. We also have all of the other educational content that we created in 2020 housed on that site. And we're rolling out new content there on a regular basis. So please do subscribe to the channel so that you can participate. Our speakers today include Suzanne DiGeronimo, FAIA. As president of DiGeronimo Architects, Ms. DiGeronimo has over 30 years experience in architecture. Her project management expertise focuses on quality control with strict compliance to schedule and cost controls. She has steered the firm to deliver a quality architectural product to clients, including public agencies and private businesses. The firm's size allows Ms. DiGeronimo total personal commitment to each project and to each client. Her intimate knowledge of each project ensures successful completion. As managing principal, Ms. DiGeronimo establishes the firm's overall goals and objectives and coordinates their implementation. She applies quality assurance, quality control management techniques to guide each project. She has trained architects across the U.S. in quality management for the AIA. She has received training from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in total quality management, practice, and principles, and is knowledgeable in ISO 9000 procedures. Suzanne is licensed to practice architecture in 7 states. And she's a New Jersey professional planner, certified interior designer, and member of NCARB. She's a fellow of the American Institute of Architects and holds a Bachelor of Architecture degree from the Cooper Union School of Architecture. Thank you for joining us today, Suzanne. Our second speaker will be Richard Schaefer, PE. Richard Schaefer is the Chief Engineer of Design and Environmental for New Jersey Transit and has served in that role since 2019, leading the capital planning effort in housing architectural and engineering design services, environmental and energy group, and the standards and quality group. A structural bridge engineer by discipline, Rich has over 23 years of diversified experience designing and building infrastructure projects in the Northeast region and around the country, varying from simple overpass replacement to complex cable-supported bridge rehabilitation. He has extensive experience building and implementing capital programs with a focus on buildable solutions that make the most of the dollars spent. Rich also serves as an adjunct professor at NJIT, where he teaches a master's class in bridge design. He's a licensed professional engineer for the state of New Jersey and holds a BS in civil engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Thanks for joining us, Richard. And I will be our moderator today. My name is Stacy Rule-Cleash. I'm a past president of AIA New Jersey and the Architects League of Northern New Jersey. Today, I'm participating as advocacy consultant for the Public Awareness Committee, which is the committee that is bringing you this series. We encourage you to share links to this series with your clients, as one of the primary goals of this series is to help our clients understand the value of the architect and the role that we play in helping our community and our society in working through the challenges related to COVID-19. So please do share this information beyond your office. Has Richard been able to join us yet?
Yep, he's here.
Okay, great. All right, then I am going to stop screen sharing, and Rich will start with his portion of the presentation. Oh, I also want to mention that Rich has to leave before we get to the Q&A. So any questions for Rich, please type them into the Q&A section during his presentation, as he will be answering his questions immediately after he finishes his slides. Thank you very much for cooperating.
You're on mute, Rich.
Sorry. I'm going to try to screen share. Apologies if I don't get it right the first time, and I apologize for having to leave early. Hopefully this works out. So let's see what we can do. Hopefully that worked.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
You're good to go.
This is a short presentation. My view as an owner and the struggles we've had with the pandemic and where I think we're going next. So to get at it quickly. Will you ever look at a handle in a train the same way? Is kind of one of the simple questions that we're dealing with right now. A year ago today, I was on a train, and it was 3 weeks before this happened. And I never would have thought twice about walking down this train and looking at these handles and grabbing one when the train moved. I don't think anybody does that anymore. How that's changed us as an agency. In many ways, we look at the pandemic and health as a priority in ways that we never have before. Obviously, we didn't have a pandemic before. looking at anything that we touch with fresh eyes. We always have a solid cleaning regimen, but what's the next level? What's the best practice? Where do we go next as an owner now that this has become such a new thing for us? Cleaning, which was once a routine effort. Trains go back to their yards, they get cleaned. Now it's a life safety issue, which is number one at the transit agency is life safety. And to view it as health and hygiene to life safety has changed how we look at cleaning and maintaining our fleet. And we rethink everything now. Toilet seats, light bulbs, switches. We have stations in design where we have gone back into the bathrooms and thrown away the drawings with the fixtures on them because we want things that are no touch. We want surfaces that make sense, even in a world where they may not be built a year or two from now. These are things that matter going forward, and people will always think about this. And one of the challenges we have to deal with is pivoting and responding to challenges, new directions that are placed before us in a world that is vastly different than what it was even a year ago. Flexibility, being able to move and respond is kind of the name of the game for us, and how we adapt to the projects we put out as a part of our capital plan. And we are revisiting that capital plan even now to look at it as how we deliver these essential services in light of what has changed from when we initially published it this time last year. Our strategic goals haven't changed though. We're still doing what we want to do in terms of being the best in class service provider. We're going to get there. We're going to get our OTPs up, our service quality up. We want a world-class customer experience. All these things have not changed. How we get there has, but the end goal of being the best is still what we are here for. We have a great planning group who looks at these things as far afield as they can. And there's one thing that we feel very confident about is we are certain there is no certainty. No one really knows what the world is going to look like when everyone is vaccinated and we get back to some semblance of normalcy. We know that those who need transit, the critical workers, the essential workers who go back and forth and make the world that we live in work today, are still using transit. We have many stations where ridership is negligible, 5-10 people get on a train at a time, but those communities that have these essential workers in them, they are booming. We have 50-60% ridership even now at the peak of pandemic. We know that there's a massive influx of city residents to what we consider a whistle-stop towns. There are people who are moving out of the city and paying a premium. I've heard stories, I'm sure you have too, that in many communities in and around transit, homes are going for 20-30% above value and they sell in 5 days. And the only reason it takes 5 days is because there's a bidding war. I don't know where these people are planning on going, but I imagine that they're fighting over houses close to stations because they intend to go back, either part-time, full-time. But that is a priority for them and how they shop for homes. We don't know what that influx will look like. We know that we were near capacity or at capacity, or in some cases over capacity before the pandemic. But what does that mean after? We don't know what those future patterns are going to look like. We know that we are still gathering data. We know that there will always be work from home at this point forward. I think that that's something that we've learned. But we also know that insofar as where the priorities lie with the future, what has happened, what's happening right now in Texas, what's happening here, a sustainable future is intrinsically tied to transit. So no matter what happens to the ridership, that sustainable component, being able to build a strong, resilient infrastructure, is going to be a priority for us. That's something that we have learned. That's something actually we knew since Sandy, but I think we were one of the early agencies who learned it. And resilience and climate change are even now driving our decision-making tools. Tunnels, stations, Hoboken, which lives on a river and was at water level when we built it over 100 years ago. Things like this are things that sit in the fronts of our minds. When we look at factors that matter, when we make decisions about what projects we chase for grant opportunities, for advancement in the construction cycle, and what matters both to us and to the community, the things that we see as increasing emphasis in the coming year, equity. Equity is a huge thing, and it's something that we all need to focus on because transit is a driver of equity. Health and safety, always our number one, always. Resiliency and sustainability, so intrinsically tied to where the world is going. Budget. No one really knows what a budget looks like anymore. We just came off of a short fiscal year. The coming year is looking promising based on what the governor announced recently, and the incoming intimations of the federal administration. So things could be good, things could be bad, but these are things that we think are going to be up in the air. We're going to have to be nimble on. We know that there's going to be a decrease in ridership and revenue. Will it come back? I don't see why it wouldn't. Transit has survived the pandemic before in 1918. We've survived multiple world wars. You could argue that some of the tracks that we have were laid mere years after Aaron Burr shot Alexander Hamilton. So we've been through a lot, and we've always bounced back. 9/11 hurt, but that came back harder than we ever thought it was and faster than we ever imagined it could be. So we know that we have good faith that the tracks are there, people will ride it. Demographic shifts, communities are always changing. We see strong development in some of our closer circle communities in the electrified territories. East Orange, for example, is booming. Bloomfield is booming. Some of our more outwater stations on our diesel lines are petering out. There's always demographic shifts, and being able to nimbly handle that and making sure that it is a fair solution when we implement it are things that we know are becoming increasingly important to us. And in addition, we still have the same priorities we've always had. We have aging infrastructure. I am 46 years old, and I am younger than any movable bridge that we own. That's a problem. We have to maintain essential services to make sure people can get where they need to go. It's not just about the commuters, it's about keeping people who have no other choice moving forward and focusing on them and making sure that the people who make New Jersey work have places that they can go. And of course, reducing greenhouse emissions gases. We are obligated now to go to 100% electric bus purchases by 2032, eliminating effectively our ability or our need for diesel buses. And anyone who can do the math will tell you that transit is the most efficient way to move people back and forth. But even with our diesel bus fleet, even with our diesel rail fleet, we use approximately a super tanker's worth of oil every year. And that's something that we need to move away from. Things that matter when we pick projects, when you as architects look at what we do and where we're going, these are the things that we look at when we evaluate when we evaluate the projects and how we figure out what makes sense for transit. Projects have to make sense. We can't just do things because we want to do them. We never have, but that's more important now, making sure every dollar gets every best benefit rung out of it down to the penny. A zero emissions future, more and more realistic every year. It used to be a pie in the sky dream. Now it's inevitable. Transit is an engine for prosperity. Transit is in many ways the economic driver for a lot of what happens in New Jersey. We want to make it more so. We want to make it the tool that everybody relies on to get back and forth, and not just from commuting from here to there, or getting to your job, or getting to the grocery store. Everywhere that we put a station, everywhere that we put a bus terminal, the community blossoms. And we want to make certain that that's something that we really focus on and make New Jersey a better place with the things that we build. We have to build healthy environments. New Jersey has been taking a knock for years, and it's not just from the opening scenes of The Sopranos. There are opportunities to make this a better state using the tools that we have at transit, and that's something that we are going to focus on. We need to move faster than the climate. I don't think at this point there's a lot of counter argument that the waters are rising. We have horrible history with Sandy, with what a climatic event can do to us. And we are working hard to realize a lot of those projects. And you're seeing shovels in the ground now from events that happened in 2008. So to see that is really heartening. But we have an honest and sincere need to stay ahead of the weather and build faster and higher before the water catches up with us. And of course, deliver. We're coming off of a decade of disinvestment. We want to build more, we want to build faster, and we want to get things in the ground that make life better as quickly as we can. And we are developing tools to do that as we speak. No tool is off the table. P3, design build, CMAR, or any of the other flexible tools that accelerate delivery with the understanding, and I'd like to think that we're fairly sophisticated in this approach. There is no perfect tool. Every tool has the right solution attached to it. Not every job can be design build, not every job can be P3. When we prioritize projects, we weight certain things. If you've seen our capital plan, you've seen these sorts of words used there on the pie charts, the radar charts, where we talk about the intrinsic value of a project. I hope you've all read the capital plan. We put a lot of effort into that. I think it's very pretty, but you kind of get like a snapshot of the value of the project in the pie chart that is on its individual project sheet. And the things that we value, this is largely the structure of it. And you can see from the grayed out where we've added more sophistication or we've promoted things that we think matter more based on the way the world has changed. So resiliency, which was always important, has moved up. Environmental sustainability, we're adding in air quality because that is an important component of what we do. Access and accessibility and inclusion, something that we really need to focus on. Our system is ancient and much of it predates AIA. Getting those stations that need it, the stations that are local to facilities and appurtenances that matter to those types of communities are things that we want to focus on. Network impact. Everyone likes to talk about transit and they think about it as you get on a train, you get off a train, you get on a bus, you get off a bus. You don't see how all of these pieces interact like a watch. Every bus doesn't affect every train, but a lot of them do. There's a lot of bits and pieces that we work with our peer carriers and the freight lines who loan us their lines to use our trains, the Port Authority who lets us use their bus terminal, Amtrak who lets us use their Northeast Corridor. All these things have to work together. And optimizing that, bringing every last bit of quality out of the system we have is a big thing for us. Even now, you should start seeing a lot of activity come out. And I'm sure that many of you are tracking some of the procurements that we're chasing. We're not just paving lots anymore and doing small things. We're dreaming big and we're putting RFPs where our mouth is. Newark Penn Station. The governor recently announced that he wants to make that a crown jewel in New Jersey. And we are putting out an RFP soon to force that forward and make that what it should be. It should be a station that's worthy of being called Penn Station. It is now, but we want to make it the best. And we want to show the rest of the country that when you stop in New Jersey, Newark isn't what you think it used to be. Northern Bus Garage. This is our beachhead in getting to electrification. An all new bus garage, something we haven't had in 20 years. It will hold hundreds of buses, hopefully as many as 400 to 500, and it will be ready to support a fully electric fleet, which is going to be our launch pad for getting our whole fleet to full electrification. Portal Bridge, shovel in the ground next year, taking qualifications for contractors now. What a huge accomplishment, a multi-billion-dollar program. We're resiliency focused, operations focused, high speed to get across the Hackensack River, which is not something we've ever had with our ancient Portal Bridge. Bootstrapping our bus garages up to accept electrification. Walter Rand, a major transportation hub. I said everywhere that transit puts a station or a terminal, the community blossoms. Here's an opportunity to prove it with what we're planning at Walter Rand. And of course, Hoboken Long Slip. We will now have the ability to not only make Hoboken more resilient against flooding events, but we're going to have 6 high-level platforms, 1,200 foot long. We can take any train anyone has and park it in Hoboken. And that is a huge flexibility advantage. We know that we're going to a zero emissions future. We know that all of our bus garages need to pivot to react to a changing demographic, a changing market, the changing infrastructure that comes, the range limitations that come with buses. And one of the issues that we have is we are chasing a moving target. We're designing for electric buses today that may not exist until tomorrow. And 10 years from now will be different. For an agency that drives buses that are sometimes 20 years old, some of our buses use light bulbs, the sealed beam light bulbs. Remember buying those that you go to Pep Boys, you buy the square light bulb, but you put it in your car? We have those. We're moving past that. And we have massive acres and acres and acres of bus roofs, and we're going to make as many of them solar fields as we can. We are clearing the way for a faster Northeast Corridor. We're going to make things faster, smoother, better. And we are going to focus on our stations and our bridges, which are our sore points in our system, and opportunities to really offer substantial improvements to the communities they touch and the riders that we serve. And everything we build, we're not looking at it strictly from a state of good repair, although that is our central focus. We want to build back better. When we look at places like Hoboken Terminal, the ferry terminal that's there, we want to build things that are resilient, will last, and will serve wherever we go for future generations. And that is a forward-thinking approach that we're going to be applying to everything. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Rich. We have some questions for you. First question comes from Ron Weston. Does New Jersey Transit fund and or lead planning for TOD building and redevelopment outside of your transit property and rights of way?
We generally don't. We have a group within real estate, partially within our larger strategic planning group, that does assist those efforts. We often team with developers who want to build TOD in our regions, and we make certain that where features are beneficial to both sides, that's something we can accommodate either through land sharing, rights of access. We're doing that right now in Brick Church with the developer who is planning a massive development there. And we're teaming with him to make sure he's got clean access to the Brick Church station. We're working together to make sure that station is everything that it should be in terms of quality when you walk into it. And they concurrently are making certain that it is a station that you see and looks prominent when you come to the community. It's not hiding behind the loading dock of a ShopRite.
Thank you. If anyone else has questions for Rich, please type them in the Q&A box. Rich is not going to be able to stay with us until the end of the program. Here we have a question from David regarding reducing GHG emissions. What are New Jersey Transit's plans, if any, for expanding electrification of its rail operations? Is it possible with shared use with freight?
We do share many of our tracks with freight interests. Conrail, Norfolk Southern have some shared alignments. Right now, the inner ring, we call the inner ring, is electrified. We are looking at options for the future of what trains are in a future world. Electrification in and of itself, I don't know that many in the public really understand how breathtaking of an exercise that is. Substations for traction power can be $500 million. The efforts that go into maintaining that type of infrastructure is breathtaking. Many of our diesel lines have tree encroachments, which also protect the communities from having to look at the train. But that means cutting all that back because you can't have a tree fall on electric lines. There's a lot of involvement in the technology around trains right now. Right now, we're investing in dual power locomotives that can rapidly switch from diesel to electric. And there's a lot of advancements in battery technology for trains, which we've seen our freight partners use, has progressed in Europe. And I think there's even a sheet in the capital plan where it is our intention to study that. So a future without diesel on train lines is something that I think is coming. But what that looks like exactly, I don't think we're there yet.
Thank you. Stephen asks, can you address how New Jersey Transit is working to make disposal of your underutilized properties along transit lines available for private sector development? Historically, this has been a very long process.
Yes, it has. One of the benefits of the capital program is that we are going through and categorizing all of our pieces of property and the value they serve and how they tie into the future plans looking 20 or 30 years out. A transit agency is always hesitant to give away property because it's very difficult to get back, but knowing where we're going to go in the long term should speed that process.
Thank you. Christopher asks, is New Jersey Transit contemplating extending any of its existing lines, and is New Jersey Transit looking at further light rail design as well?
If you go to the capital plan, you will see that the northern branch and the 440 extension of the Hudson-Bergen Light Rail is always on the table. We are, I think, RFQs are out for the Lackawanna, the Roseville Tunnel extension. So that project has motion to it. And we also have an RFP on the street for a transit way between Secaucus and the Meadowlands, which is agnostic of mode type. And we'll go with well, there's a bunch of features that tie into that, but I won't speak to what mode that is. But system expansion is an important part. I think I would refer you to the capital plan to see what is in the works, and I would refer you to our webpage about RFPs to see what's currently in play.
Thank you. William asks, please give a brief overview of future prospects for transit villages within the state.
Transit villages are largely driven by developers more so than they are on us. We do everything we can to make their lives easier and profit the system. So I don't really have a good answer for you on that.
Okay. If anyone else has any questions, please type them in now for Rich, as we've answered everything that's been sent in so far. Suzanne, before you begin, is there anything that you and Rich want to, or anything that you wanted to talk about with Rich? Because once you begin his program, he might not be with us at the end.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, I think we're good. I don't have any particular questions for Rich.
Okay. So I'd like to let the audience know that Rich is dealing with a business emergency today, and we're so delighted that he was able to be with us for the webinar and to share his presentation. And if anyone thinks of further questions for Rich, please don't hesitate to make a note of them, and I will make sure that we get those questions over to Rich later. Rich, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Rich.
Thanks, guys. I'll stick around for a little bit, but I'll leave in a bit.
Okay. Suzanne, if you could start sharing your screen.
Can you see that? Can you see that?
Not yet.
How's that?
There you go.
Good. Here we go.
That's great.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for coming and joining us today. I'm Suzanne DiGeronimo, and I'm speaking to you on this AIA New Jersey seminar series, Public Transportation Post-COVID-19. Winston Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And I wholeheartedly agree. The COVID crisis has turned us all around and upside down, but you know what? It's all for the good. There's no going back to the way transportation had been in the past. We're going to talk today about this idea content, and it's transit delivers, all-purpose streets, maintenance in the spotlight, bike superhighways, digitally enabled transit, and multi-purpose neighborhoods. First of all, you know, public transportation played a vital role in the COVID-19 lockdown. Ridership was down 90% in some cases, and naysayers were predicting that, oh my goodness, public transportation is going to die. But to me, the crisis underscored just how important is functioning transit. Bus and rail transportation got essential workers to their jobs, so the rest of us who stayed home could. Cargo at seaports and airports and their distribution systems kept the deliveries flowing to, yes, us, all of us who stayed at home. And the emphasis is on the public part of public transportation, transportation available to all, affordable, universally accessible for all workers, whether at the top doctor salary scale or just some of the lowest paid among all workers. And of course, they and we and everyone wants our transit to be safe and secure, well policed. And we all want our transit clean. And COVID-19 has added sanitation to the cleanliness demands we have of our transit system. And I don't think we as riders are ever going to be going back to any lesser standard. So what worked? Maybe thinking ahead is overrated. You know what? Let's look at what evolved naturally from the past and our COVID-19 lockdowns. Way back in time, in the middle of the core of the COVID crisis, there was a natural system of trial and error, and in tandem with the desperation of the moment, there were some painful scenarios, but soon things got discarded in favor of systems that worked. So for us, casual observers, as we are of COVID-19 transit, let us observe what worked over our year lockdown. Evolving streets, restaurants had taken to the open air in the streets. It was playful and happy in the summer, but some stalwart patrons dined outdoors even in the winter in full ski gear. Church services were taken to parking lots, congregants in cars, but I think that was more Texas than New Jersey. But of course, here in our area, there was a priest who took his altar and his mass out to the street in front of the homes of his congregants. Order online, delivery and pickup at local stores. We had cargo. You know what? It had been high all the time, record volume for seaports and air cargo. That included warehouses and fulfillment centers and delivery services, UPS, Federal Express. So numbers aren't bad for everyone across the board. Well, queuing, you know what, for everything. We queued for pharmacies and food and health clinics and testing and now vaccinations. And where did all of this socially distanced queuing happen? In the sidewalks and the streets, of course. And then, of course, there was the internet. Buses were converted to web-connected vehicles and parked in in streets to allow school children to attend school remotely for those families who didn't have access to the web. And recreation happened in closed streets to augment overcrowded parks. And you know what? Pedestrians were out there too, not commuting, but walking, discovering the streets of their neighborhoods. Evolving homes. Homes were everything: offices, schools, gyms, receiving depots, recreation centers, entertainment centers. Children and parents were home together 24/7. And schools and offices were in bathrooms, basements, bedrooms, closets, living rooms, and kitchens. Offices sent technical staff to home to set up neighborhoods and to troubleshoot. And homes reinforced and revamped home internet connections. Families, friends, and neighbors and children formed pods, school pods, neighbor pods, friendship pods, anything to keep anyone sane. We had evolving transit. Social distancing strategies were applied for transit employees. Let's not forget them, to keep drivers and conductors safe, like buses loading from the rear to protect the drivers. There were fewer buses, rail cars, and subways running because transit employees were also sickened with COVID. And occupancy limits were reduced and, you know what, enforced in stations, buses, and rail cars. And queuing occurred at social distances at the 42nd Street bus terminal. Customers were told to wait in the main terminal building and not queue at the gates. They were clean, washed, scrubbed, UV'd, and sanitized subway cars, rail cars, and stations. And air cargo was strong. Shipping and container cargo was strong. There was a severe reduction in the use of cars, and as a corollary, we had a record low of air pollution. So that was looking backward to what worked. So what's ahead? We're looking at our idea content. Let's look to the future. And the first one, transit delivers. Transit delivers. Amtrak, New Jersey Transit, MTA, PATH will partner with delivery providers, U.S. Postal Service, FedEx, to deliver to homes, doorsteps, goods by rail. There will be package mail cars on commuter rail lines and on subway lines, and sections of buses will be devoted to package mail. Package deliveries will run overnight when computer usage is low to stations. From stations, deliveries will become exceedingly local by walking or electric vehicles like golf carts, or you know what, maybe even by drone. Package distribution contracts will supplement transit income. A steady stream of income will better transit bond ratings and enhance transit borrowing capacity. There will be many pop-up stations which will appear on subway platforms and on transit rail platforms, even those outside. At bus stops, there will be a little bank of pickup lockers adjacent to the bus shelters. Commuters and the general public will pick up their deliveries at their local neighborhood transit stations or bus stops. Transportation's new retail. You know, the retail and the leases that went to transit from many historic stations like Union Station in DC, Grand Central in New York, the Oculus downtown Manhattan, they all relied on transit, on retail to supplement their income. But retail has been not very popular. You know, people are not going to stores. So how can transit leased retail be saved to save our transit stations? Will there be a new retail? Well, I wholeheartedly think yes. We're already ordering online and doing curbside pickup, and in-store pickup will continue. So let's look at the new retail store. The new retail store, customers will be greeted in a reduced footprint on the sales side. The sales force will service customers from an increased footprint on the stockroom side. There will be a few samples on display on the sales side and the pickup in stores along your transit route. The new retail and transit station will become local mini fulfillment centers. And now we're going to look at all-purpose streets. Streets will become market streets, market fairs, farmers markets, craft fairs, sidewalk sales, church-sponsored carnival. Oops. Okay. Too much enthusiasm there. Okay, church-sponsored carnivals. Streets will support our craving for socialization and reinforce our community. There will be no need to travel to these events. They're all going to be happening on the local streets near you. And you know what? We're all going to shop locally and help revise our local small business community. And streets as hubs. Sidewalks, COVID, were too narrow to bypass with social distancing. There's a website, www.sidewalklabs.com, which created a model of visualization, and it showed all of New York City's sidewalks that were too narrow to socially distance. But all of this social distancing and expanded personal allowable space that we now need and crave around us, within which we feel comfortable, in the future, I think people are still going to require that kind of space around us to feel comfortable. So queuing in the street, restaurant seating in the street, social interaction in the street, zoning will need to change to accommodate all of these things. Recreation in the streets. New York City made 40 miles of streets pedestrian only to expand the outdoors and to relieve city parks of overcrowding. And as I mentioned before, even walking during COVID was different. Walking in commuter times was point to point, hurry up, and it was a rush. Walking in COVID was, well, you know, pointless. You just wandered out around and looked at your neighborhood and discovered the surprise of pleasant streets that had always surrounded you. There's a planning response to this. Change zoning regulations for sidewalk and curbside accommodation, for benches, playful experiences like this, exercise station, you know what, even a passive posting of a historic spot. You are standing here where something all happened before. And then garden streets. Now, this is an online publication. It's called The Guardian, and they retained 4 architects to re-envision 4 cities post-COVID. This one imagining morphs from a very hard-surfaced, hardscape street into this garden environment. And then the website numbers and labels every one of these elements on how they got this transformation to occur. And you know what? The website is certainly worth searching, but you know, who wouldn't want to live in a garden? So the next thing we're going to talk about is maintenance. Maintenance is in the spotlight, and finally, maintenance gets some respect. And we do have to take a moment to express a grateful appreciation for all transit workers. There was whole news segments devoted to workers sanitizing fleets and stations. And so finally, transit maintenance got its time in the spotlight. And I feel good maintenance practices will continue post-COVID. sanitizing and cleaning train stations, buses, station stops, funding for state of good repair and general maintenance of ventilation mechanics and ventilation filters on rail cars will continue. So hail the maintenance. Maintenance mattered most in all of our lives during the COVID crisis. And there has to be a continued appreciation for the maintenance workers who held the crisis line, similarly to the health workers. It's interesting to note that rail cars generally, and the New York City subway cars specifically in this slide, recirculate air 18 times an hour, exceeding the recommended air circulation rate by a factor of 1.5. And so transit is your most COVID safe spot. And then there's crowd control. Buses will continue to board from the rear, allowing isolation of bus drivers. Transit will redirect its running stock to pick up at the most used customer station away from unused routes. Rider occupancy capacity will be reduced for buses, rail cars, and station occupancy. Offices will reduce in-person occupancy and hence transit ridership will reduce. Offices will redistribute employees' comings and goings over a longer duration and hence the time for returned commuter ridership will elongate. There will be fewer subways, trains, and buses running once full socialization distancing capacities limits have been set. And then transit will learn from airport security. Before boarding buses and trains, transit personnel will be taking riders' temperatures or possibly conducting infrared surveys. That's a heat sensor, scanning the waiting crowd, and possibly checking vaccination paperwork. Interesting, from Australia, their published reduction in the capacity of transit vehicles and ferries, and notice that the bus only accepts 12 passengers. See also the one bullet about the app that tells the rider not just when the next car or bus will come, but which rail cars or buses have spaces available. The new bus and rail cars, I don't believe there's going to be any more open gang cars. Trains and buses will have dividers and compartments. Think Agatha Christie's Orient Express. Stations will be more spacious with occupancy limits enforced. There will be more sanitizing sunlight in spaces, hand sanitizing station, and freestanding sinks. And here again, instead of the open gang subway cars and buses, the new cars will have dividers, walls, and barriers. And so we're going to our bike superhighways now. This is another from the UK publication, The Guardian. This time, you've all been there, downtown Manhattan at the municipal building. You all know what that looks like. It's an extreme hardscape. Well, here we have it transformed into a bike superhighway. The National Highway Administration, I believe, will shift its funding to the edges of roads to protect pedestrians and cyclists. And let's talk for a minute about digitally enabled transit. In the future, monitoring traffic, transit, and footfalls will help people avoid busy times. I already use the time and volume apps on my navigation web pages to gauge when I'm going to go to the grocery store. You do too. Post-COVID, data will show riders the least congested time of day to take transit. And while you're at it, we can monitor air quality and help those who have a more vulnerable immune system. Pre-COVID, I like to take the ferry from Weehawken to 38th Street. And on my return, I studiously studied the bus locator app. It told me where the next bus was along its travel route, so I could gauge my timing of my ride home. Well, you know what? If an app can do that for a rider, the bus driver ought to be able to check on the number of people waiting along the route to board the bus. Now we're going to talk about multi-purpose neighborhoods. This one is another one from The Guardian. It's a colorful image, but what it does is it overlays an entire industrial neighborhood. And it showcases the possibility of converting that to a mixed-use neighborhood. The architects here titled this a polycentric city, a city of little villages. Everything you need is within a 15-minute walk or bus ride from the front of your home, making the home the center, the concentric part of the planning concept. And of course, that idea originated in the 1900s in the Garden City movement by Ebenezer Howard. And one of his built Garden City examples, as you all know, is right here in our very own New Jersey, Radburn. And then there is Jane Jacobs. I can't forget her life and death of the great American city. She loved the diversity offered by her neighborhood, Greenwich Village. Cargo pods. You have air cargo and seaport cargo and trucking depots. I believe they will be continuing to strengthen the transportation goods sector. But what about if they occurred in smaller pods in each local neighborhood with facilities to support the delivery to homes, like small local warehouses, light industry, pocket fulfillment centers, and yes, drone deliveries. And corporate headquarters. Corporations will be creating a model where headquarter buildings are passé, where its offices and therefore its employees are more distributed. Corporations will continue to support local people working from home. Corporations will set up small facility office locations with a variety of choices for employees, copiers, maybe larger monitors with broader view shed cameras for mini team Zoom meetings, pick up supplies, and maybe for employees to get technical help. And so the better designed solutions to transportation post-COVID will be those that have evolved from the bottom up, those that have been brought forward as good ideas and refined. Let's look, for example, at a face mask. It's pretty ubiquitous, and it's a symbol of the COVID era, and it represents the smallest element that secures our safety as we move through this crisis. It's universally recognizable, yet every mask is individual and very different, and each is a design statement from the bottom up. Thank you.
Suzanne, that was terrific. Thank you so much. We have some questions for you.
Yes.
Mark asks, will decreases in auto transportation and increases in public transit allow streets to accommodate more pedestrians? How will planners instantiate a change in street design? Can architects help with this?
Well, the change in street design that had already been discussed previously was to create a rapid bus lane from one bus center to the other, and it would run down one of the major streets. One such rapid bus lane was contemplated at one time between Irvington, the bus center station in Irvington on Springfield Avenue, and Newark bus stations. You just go straight down Springfield Avenue then, and there would be a rapid bus line that would be going down the center of that. A rapid bus line would mean that you need to have station stops along the way. Usually we're just talking about a shelter for the station stop, but everything needs to have some level of planning. Otherwise, it'll all be ugly and won't look good at all. So architects should, in fact, be part of the solution, and I believe that they are part of the planning and part of the solution. So perhaps it's just you that needs to get engaged.
Thank you. Rich, I know you're still here with us. If you have any additional information to add to any of these questions, please feel free to participate in the Q&A. My next question is from Dennis. It says, do we think that this app concept of mass information delivery will become the new norm for things like air quality or COVID hotspot alerts functioning in real time using geofencing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. Any other questions for our panelists? Christopher says, excellent presentation, Suzanne. And I know
Oh,
that
thank you.
that Stephen said, Rich, thanks for your great presentation. So we have a lot of appreciation here from the audience. I want to say that this is a different topic from the other programs that we've had. And I find it personally very exciting. I don't have a lot of opportunity to use public transportation, but I frequently consider using public transportation. And then I find that because I use it so infrequently, I become a little bogged down in figuring out how to get from A to B when I'm used to just hopping in my car. So I'm really excited to learn of the new innovation that you see rolling out. I love Rich's comments on the modernization and convenience factors that will be built into public transportation. I can't wait to see more public transportation to some of our seaside communities, which I know are sometimes hard to get to using public transportation. And I'm really excited for more opportunities for people of all generations to be able to tap into New Jersey's current and future public transportation systems to help the environment, to bring communities together, and to really support the businesses that rely on commuters and recreational users of public transportation to frequent their businesses. So I'm really excited about all the ideas that were presented today. I hope that these things really do come to fruition and that our elected officials can support the ideas and processes that you have described today. And I'm absolutely thrilled that both of you were able to participate as our speakers, because I don't know of two people better qualified to share the vision for tomorrow's public transportation. So thank you both very much.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you for inviting us.
Today's session was recorded, as you know. We will have this session edited and available to you on our YouTube channel. The quickest way to be informed on what we're posting on YouTube is to become a subscriber of the New Jersey AIA YouTube channel, so that you will be notified when we have new content on there. But as I said, please enjoy the content that's available and do share the links with your communities so that we can spread the good word of the value of the architect to your clients and well beyond. So thanks everybody for participating, and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.